Hello everyone, my name is Pascal Borel and I'm speaking to you from the Swiss Alps today, which has very recently become, around my place at least, a major cluster of the COVID-19 pandemia. The reason I'm speaking to you is on the request of various of my contacts, both in the United States, in Asia, but also in Northern Europe, which are asking me to do the same videos that I have done in French already, sharing my knowledge of the disease. I was in Thailand at the beginning of the year, and therefore I was in contact at a very early stage with the start of the pandemic. I came back in Switzerland on the 1st of Feb, or late January, I should say. I was very happy not to have any symptoms in the weeks after my return. Just to present myself briefly, I'm 56 years old, I'm married, I have 2 kids, a daughter and a son. And my background is I've been working in mostly the financial industry for many years. I also have a background in science, where I have written a book, only in French at this stage in time, on the neurophysiology of ethics and neurophysiology in general. I have been working also for Fidelity Investments, the great fund manager in the United States, where I was a director in Geneva, in charge of all private banking market and institutional investors. Now, I'm going to answer a few questions which are coming back to me on a regular basis, and I've been asked to bring a few answers. The first one is coronavirus SARS-CoV-2. Is it comparable to the seasonal flu, i.e. influenza? And I'll start with a slight joke, which is that have you ever seen the seasonal flu putting in quarantine 1 billion people on Earth? Well, clearly the answer is no. You know the answer. And you should trust the facts rather than the words. And this is the first fact. The second fact is, how much does it kill? In the best case scenario, like in South Korea, the case fatality rate is around, I would call it 0.9%, 0.8%, with measures which would be interpreted as extreme in our Western world. In the worst case scenario, like in Italy, it will kill up to 100 times more, stroke around 9 to 10% of the people which are being infected. Of course, those numbers are going to go down, or at trust, I hope they will be going down when we know more, when everyone has been tested and we understand that the number of asymptomatic people, and we understand those numbers. Now, if it was just for the case fatality rate, it would be manageable, although I hate to say that because my Italian friends are going to kill me. On the other hand, there is another problem, which is the R note. The R note is the index representing how fast the disease is spreading. And it tells you how many people will one infected person give it to. I.e., the influenza, the seasonal flu, will spread at an R note which is comprised between 1.2 and 1.3, to be precise 1.28 according to stats. As another example, the Spanish flu of 1918-1919 was spreading with an R note of 1.7 to 2.2. which is quite high. It was sufficient to kill 5 to 10% of the worldwide population. It's pretty bad. Now, SARS-CoV-2 has an R note in a population that doesn't apply any social distancing or quarantine, which is comprised between 4.7 and 6.6. In other words, it's absolutely unstoppable. So that makes it extremely different by the seasonal flu. But now, to stay on a good note, where we are lucky, in a sense, is that it only kills X amount of people. Because if it had symptoms like a hemorrhage fever, for instance, it would be dramatic, because we would be looking at losing half the world's population. With an R naught at 4 or above, as I said, it's unstoppable. So the next question really is the quarantine the only solution we have today? Well, to answer this one, I will phrase it another way. Will we have to go back to the ancient wisdom of our ancestors? Because they had designed at a time where they had no scientific analysis capabilities such as we do, but they had a sense of observation, which was certainly as good, if not better, than the one we have today, because it's all they had. They defined and they invented the concept of quarantine, not 20-tine or 14-tine, no, quarantine. And quarantine is based on the French word 40, 40. And what does it appeals to? Well, if you look at COVID-19 and the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it has up to 2 weeks of asymptomatic period during which you are infected and you are spreading the disease, but you have no symptoms. Up to 20 days. Normally it's 4, 5, 7, stroke 10 days, but there are cases where it goes up to 20. So you put this 20 number on the side. Then you will have 10 days of symptoms whereby you're going to have a cough, where you're going to have a fever, where you're going to have headaches, and, well, you know the symptoms. And after that, at the end of the symptomatic period, when you have created your immunity, you will still be contagious for maybe 2 days, 3 days, maybe up to 5 days. And then you take a security margin of 5 days. That means that if my count is correct, you get 20 days plus 10 plus 5 plus 5, altogether 40 days. And you know that after 40 days, any carrier will not be able to spread the disease based on the fact that it has lowered the viral charge of the virus in his own body, and the virus will not be able to find a healthy carrier to spread it around. So that's probably the only way we can fight and defeat the disease at this stage in time. And some people are telling me, yeah, but what about vaccines? And, well, vaccines are, of course, a route that we are exploring, because we have molecular biology nowadays. We have all the arsenal of what is necessary to defeat this virus through vaccines. But it's been proven that the vaccine today has spikes, the protein spikes, which attach to the receptor of your membranes, and they use mainly a receptor called ACE2 receptor. But it's been shown that the virus can still spread with 4 other receptors, namely the CD147, the GRP78, the CD209, and the CD299. i.e., once your immunity is being developed and you have all the antibodies which are basically locking the spikes of the virus to stop it from being able to lock into the ACE2 receptor, well, the problem you have is the virus is still able to spread using other receptors on the surface of your membrane. And on the second infection, on the second exposure, once you have developed your antibodies and immune system is ready to respond to the virus still gets in through the other receptors it has at its disposal. And that, well, it is being studied at the moment, will strike a cytokine storm, which is that your immune system is going to go crazy and strike, as I said, a cytokine storm that strikes itself an inflammatory reaction of your endothelial cells, mostly in the heart cavity, and into the first part of your digestive system just after the stomach. And this will induce a fibrosis, to make it simple, that is very, very damageable to your tissues, to the tissues being exposed, and it will strike either gastrointestinal hemorrhage or a heart failure. And this is how it kills on the second, if not the third, exposure of to the SARS-CoV-2. Well, this is pretty bad news because it will make the vaccine extremely difficult to develop, without even mentioning that the vaccine that was developed for the first SARS epidemic that killed a few hundreds, mostly in Hong Kong, was lethal to most of the people that have used the vaccine. And because of the cytokine storm that was triggered when they were re-exposed to a heavy viral load. This is not good at all. It is very bad. It means that developing a vaccine in a hurry is criminal, because the damage that you will generate will be much worse than the good you're trying to achieve. So this is why developing a vaccine will take 12 to 18 months, and we cannot wait 12 to 18 months before restarting our economies and the commercial exchanges between human beings. Otherwise, the entire system in which we live and strive today will go down on the floor, will be on its knees and die. But I'll come back to this further down the line or in another video. Now, of course, antivirals. What are the antivirals? They're basically blocking one of the metabolic phase of the development of the virus. And we are speaking about hydrochloroquine quite regularly at the moment. And hydrochloroquine is not really responsible of being an antiviral. It allows the hydrochloroquine is going to open the receptor on the surface of your cells to zinc. And it's the increase of concentration of zinc that will block a specific metabolic phase of the virus. It will diminish the virus load. We'll be able to talk about how it does that into another video. But it will basically diminish the viral load, making the symptoms of the disease much lesser. And another thing which is very interesting, it will shorten the duration of the symptoms, mostly in extreme cases, and apparently it also brings down the capacity of the virus to be contagious from one patient to another. So that makes it extremely interesting, because it will offload some of the burden on our healthcare system and hospitals. So it is definitely a cure that should be explored. I know it's been used in South Korea, in Asia already. It's now being used in France, in the United States, in Switzerland indeed. So it's a very good thing. But the most simple thing is to diminish the viral load is to use a mask and to have one. Well, use mask because just as a reminder, a virus is extremely small. In 1 cubic millimeter of blood, you have 5 million red blood cells. A virus is 70 times smaller than that. So a face mask will not stop it. But it will stop you from spreading the disease through droplets when you speak, you sneeze, you cough, and what have you, on each and every surface around you, on the other people around you. And that will diminish, again, the viral load. And on the first exposure, if someone is sneezing in your face and you are covered with millions of viruses, well, clearly you'll have a viral load which will strike your body in a very aggressive way. When if you just have a few viruses, it will allow your body to cope with it gradually by developing the immunity on a not so aggressive base, and that will increase and better the prognostic of the evolution of the disease once you have it. So this is why a face mask is indispensable. And if you look at South Korea, where they have a death rate which is only between 0.8 and 0.9%, this is exactly what's happening. They are educated, they've been in contact with various pandemia already, much more than the US or much more than Europe, and therefore they are educated and they have the right attitude immediately. They wash their hands, they put a mask on, they will be wearing gloves, they will wash their clothes once they get back home, and so forth and so forth. And we all know that the best barrier against the virus is soap, because soap will dissolve the fatty membrane of the virus. And that's the best way to just get rid of it mechanically at once. So this is why it is so important to do so. Now, I'm just coming back on the quarantine principle. At the moment, we can see clearly that most of the government throughout the Western world are reactive rather than being proactive. They kind of manage the crisis on a day-to-day basis according their action and their decision to what they are being told on a day-to-day basis. This is just not on. You need to have a long-term plan. And they do that because they are trying, like Donald Trump, for instance, to relaunch and restart the economy ASAP. And they are right in the sense that our economies cannot survive more than a few weeks, I would call it, without money flows being active. Otherwise, we're going to put our economies on its knees, and we're all going to go bankrupt, and that's about it. Now, the problem they face is that if through mitigation measures as they are taken now, we are going to get this crisis for months and months and months, and we don't know when will it stop. If we were to go back to the ancient wisdom of our ancestor again, we would put the entire world literally on a freeze, cutting through all financial transactions. You don't need to pay your rent anymore. You don't need to pay your mortgages anymore. You don't need to pay the interest on your debt. You don't need to pay your liability bills. Healthcare should be actually free of charge for a certain time as well. That's the best way to protect the citizen rather than the economy, by the way, and encourage people to actually go to the hospital if they have heavy symptoms in order to save their lives. If you have a plan such as this one, where you freeze, just like Italy did. In Italy, people ain't paying their rents, they ain't paying their mortgages, they ain't paying for any healthcare services at this stage in time until the quarantine is over. And it shows the priority of the Italian government, which is clearly its citizens rather than its economy. And that's actually very clever, but because by doing so, they will actually save their economy much quicker than those who are mitigating the problem and living in the hope that this is going to disappear, by a miracle of God. No, it is not going to disappear by a miracle of God. It's going to be bad. And not having a long-term view plan where if you put everything on freeze for 60 days, at least what are going to be the consequences of what's going on. You are going to lose a fifth of your economic activities, which is compatible, I would say, if you lose like 20 or even 30% of your economy for over a year, it's still going to be a bad year. I agree with that. But it's not going to be an as bad year as if you drag this along for the next 6 or 12 or even 18 months with half our economies, if not 90% of our economies, being on the ground. So by mitigating and having a plan where you just react rather than being proactive, you react on a day by day rather than doing the things, you showing that one, your priorities are economics rather than the health of your citizens, and two, it will cost you much more in terms of the economic impact, but if you were to have a plan where you go back to the wisdom of our ancestors and freeze everything for like 40 to 60 days. that's my message today. And I'll finish off by saying that, this lack of capacity to adaptate is because people are scared. And they're scared of the fact. And if you are scared of the facts, let me tell you, it is not because of the facts. It's because you have a very low response to an environment which has changed dramatically over the last few weeks. Right, I think that's it for today. I thank you very much for your listening, and I wish all the best. Protect yourself and protect your close relatives. Make sure that you act according to all the measures which are asked by the governments, and go further when you think that is necessary. I will see you back in the next few videos and in a few hours or in a few days. Thank you very much again. Peace out to everyone.